Welcome to this episode of The People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am absolutely delighted to have in the virtual studio today Jordan Tait, or he also goes by Jordy, so let's get familiar, and we'll probably call him Jordy for most of the today's episode. And I'm so excited to have Jordy as a guest today because of what he does, and I think this will appeal to so many of you in our listening audience or to newcomers alike. And while it might not be exactly on target for everyone, uh, it is something that you'll reap the dividends from. It will pay you huge dividends. So here's what it is. Jordan Tait is a business coach who helps overworked leaders optimize their time and their team so that they can grind less and live more. He's experienced entrepreneurship from lots of different angles, from the highs and lows, owner of multiple businesses, a CEO, and a coach for hundreds of leaders. Today, Jordan teaches people how to leverage proven systems, strategies, and support to get more done in less time. Now, everyone knows you'll find in the show notes ways to get in touch with Jordy, but I'll mention it right now. Theintentionalbusiness.ca. That gives you a clue as to where Jordan sits. Or you can also visit him on LinkedIn at Jordy Tait. But theintentionalbusiness.ca or on LinkedIn at Jordy Tait. And again, you'll find it in the show notes. And but let's get into this. I mean, how do you help overworked leaders optimize their time, Jordy? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. And thanks for having me, Mike. So most of the people who come to me, it's very common that they're working 60 or 80 hours a week. They're taking work home and they're finding that more and more of their life is being traded for the success of their business or their role in their company. And it's very natural that people end up there as high performers in a very competitive world where everyone is always trying to get a little bit more done every single day. But eventually, working that way leads people to burnout, leads them to resent their work and to be neglecting too much of their life. So what I'm really about is helping people reconnect to living the life they want to live outside of work while still performing at their best. And I totally believe it's possible. It's the way I choose to live. I never work more than 35 hours a week. And I'm really serious about my business, but I'm also really serious about my life. And so that's what I like to help people with.
Serious about business and serious about life. So what led you to this pathway? What brought you to this less grind and more time?
I started my first business when I was in university, and it was a painting business. So I was painting houses to pay for school. And when I got out of university, that business
Any favorite
was doing
colors?
well.
I'm just curious.
Sorry?
Any favorite colors? House colors?
Yeah, I'm big on greens. You might be able to tell from my office here.
Okay, great. Sorry for the interruption.
So the business when I got out of university was doing well enough that I just kept doing it. And I turned it into a business that allowed me to travel 4 months a year, backpacking all over the world. And then I would come home and get back to work. And so for my first business, I realized that you can have a business and still have freedom. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I went and got a job as a corporate business trainer and coach. And I was flying all over North America, training people, helping them launch and grow their businesses. And I loved that role so much, but the work travel and living in hotels and being on the road all the time eventually led me to burnout. And I had this big conflict between, do I keep doing this thing I'm really good at and love doing with a business that I'm, appreciating the support of, or do I break free and reconnect to the way I want to live my life, which is based on autonomy, time freedom, and balance. So eventually I left that job and started and joined a new business. I became a management consultant where I was a partner and I was in total control of my time. And for the next few years, I just worked from anywhere, traveled whenever I wanted, never worked more than 35 hours a week, like I said, and recognized that it's totally possible to perform at a high level if your energy is sustainable and you're enjoying your life and your business to the fullest.
I think, is this unusual? I mean, the 35-hour work week for many people, for successful people, particularly for entrepreneurs. Is it unusual?
It definitely is. It's an intentional choice. Most of
Uh-huh.
my clients tend to be more lifestyle oriented. So they started their business because of the lifestyle they wanted it to provide. But in a lot of jobs, in a lot of leadership roles, you have so much responsibility. And the more you perform, the more work falls on your plate. And the more the
Right.
business grows, the more that it gets complicated. So a lot of people end up, you're like, oh, I just have this one extra thing. I'm going to take it home tonight, or I'm just going to do one extra hour in the office today, or I'm just going to answer a few emails on the weekend. And it starts to slide. And eventually you're working, 10, 20, 30 hours a week extra over what you'd like to be. My problem with that way of working is that it's very short term focused. So I don't believe you can sustain that effort long term at a high level without burning out or without things breaking.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, having spent so much of my life and currently with my clients in big organizations, one of the factor that I've observed is that corporations are willing to take as much as you're willing to put in. There's no limit on our contributions. Now, that changes for people at different levels in organizations. And, our HR colleagues will know about exempt and non exempt employees. Um, but an organization never really complains about the number of hours you're willing to put in. I suspect a lot of this has changed, though, in the post pandemic environment where FaceTime has taken on a different quality. Have you made any observations in that regard, Jordy?
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift. And I think that COVID was a very interesting turning point for a lot of people, a lot of organizations. We saw a lot of people in the Great Resignation leaving those companies that weren't taking care of them, that were wearing them down and expecting so much, but not giving enough back, and flocking towards the companies that were better known for work-life balance and healthy support and perks and benefits. And so I believe that the companies that believe in balance, culture, taking care of their employees, and sustainable workloads are going to be the ones that attract more people in the long run. But we all know the law firms, the tech companies that are 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week, and like you said, they'll never tell you to stop working.
Right.
And I've just seen too many people not just struggle personally, but lose relationships, neglect their family, like physically break down from working
Right.
at that level for that long. And so I believe that business and your career is a marathon, not a sprint. And you can you can do that for a short term, couple of years at most. But if you're going to be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, performing at the level you want, you need to be thinking about how you're sustaining your energy and your workload.
Yeah, so interesting because I noticed, particularly in one client system in which I'm engaged, is there are a few men out there beating their chest about everybody needs to get back to work and we need to see people. And I wonder about all of that. And because I think what I knew about the research was that productivity really didn't suffer, or it doesn't suffer when people are away from a physical office location. In fact, there may be some productivity gains uh, when a person doesn't have to commute, when they don't have to deal with trains and strangers and buses and traffic in their cars. Do you have any reflection on that, Jordy?
I personally love working remotely and will never go back to working in an office.
Right.
I find I get way more focus, work done. I still love connecting with people, but I find that more than a few hours of calls a day, it takes like more of a toll now. Um, when I look at the way we were working before, where it was 100% in the office with no decision making versus now the hybrid model where some people like 1 day a week, others like 3 days, some are going back full time now. I just like that there's more choice. And I
Right.
think that that's a huge benefit because everyone has different needs. You know, people with young kids, if it might be easier for them to stay home or if they have pets, things like that. Then I also know people who are very social and they need that office energy. They need that physical connection and they need the disconnect between their home and their work. And so I just love that it's a personal choice now because when I was an employee, I was constantly asking for the opportunity to work remotely. And now that I don't have to ask for that, I'm not going to give it back up.
Right. You suffered when you were starting a business, helping people, coaching and consulting throughout North America. You described that you experienced burnout. What can you describe that a little more fully with to the extent that you're comfortable?
Definitely. So I'm a person who really values my health and my relationships. And after months and years of constant travel, started to find myself not sleeping as well, skipping exercises because I didn't have the energy, skipping friends' birthdays because I just didn't feel socially capable because of how low I was on energy. And I started to realize trading my health and relationships for this business is not a good trade anymore. I started to suffer from really bad insomnia. And that was the breaking point for me was went through a few months where I actually was afraid to sleep. Like I wanted
Right.
sleep, I needed it, but every time I started to sleep, the stress and the anxiety wouldn't let me slow down.
Oh, I'm sorry
And
to hear that.
yeah, thank you. But it was a big turning point in my life because I committed to not letting my work overtake my life again. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping other people with that. It's not just a nice to have to me. It's a critical part of living and showing up the way I want to show up.
Right. There's got to be some key that you have unlocked that can be helpful to others. I think about the first consulting firm that I worked for. It was departure on Sunday afternoon from home and come back home on Friday and then, repeat the drill over and over. And in fact, with that consulting firm, there was at one point where I was uh, on for 12, off for 3, on for 12, because I was flying between Washington, D.C. and Sydney, where I was staged out of. And what was even more incredible about that experience at times is that I'd arrive in Sydney after this horrendous flight from Washington, D.C., first to Los Angeles and then across to Sydney. And then depending on, where our work was in that firm, you could be staged to Adelaide or to somewhere in New Zealand for work. And it was a real grind. And I wanted to get out of that grind because I had lots of different interests in terms of starting a family. And I ended up going to work for a very big corporation. And one of the reasons I wanted to work for that big corporation was because I thought there would be a lot less travel. And about 6 weeks to the day that I joined, I was told that I was going to Paris. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I went to the president of the company because I happened to sit on the same floor that he did. His office was sort of across from mine. Look, I was a junior employee in this place. I was, a director level. Uh, but I said, I came to this job because I wanted to get off the road. I'd been working for a big consulting firm at that time. And he said, you look old enough, because I was in my mid 30s at that point. He said, you look old enough that you should know that managers lie to you about that stuff, about travel. It did create for me a sort of disconnect, but I ended up having a great experience in that organization. But I think there is something for, people in my generation. I mean, when I think about it, there was incessant travel. I mean, given the pathways that I chose, right, which was helping executives to succeed, being a coach, a mentor, and a teacher to them, and helping to improve their teams and groups. So there, I've done the 2 million miles on United. I've put in my effort there, and I think that's changed in a lot of respects. Um, what do you think? I mean, what is it the desire to have a healthier lifestyle that prompted some of that change?
I think there's a few things. Definitely, there's a different there are different goals and more of a search for meaning and quality of life in
Yeah,
younger generations. Like I'm a millennial, and definitely Gen Z are the same. But I think it's also technology. Like the weeks that I spend on the road, you lose entire days just in airports. Those
sure.
aren't very efficient days. You don't actually get any work done. And then you go get a 1 day meeting with this client that now you can do through Zoom from anywhere. And so I think that that's facilitated it. The recognition that you can still, like I run my business from small little town in Canada and have clients all over North America. I love it that way. And I think that a lot more people are feeling that shift.
Yeah, it's so important because just carrying like an extra pair of sneakers in the suitcase if you're going somewhere. I mean, it can be a burden, and yet, I mean, it's so essential in order to maintain some sense of vitality and some sense of health. So, how do you start to get people out of this like rut? I need to work more in order to succeed. I mean, how does that? How do you start? Because certainly, I think a lot of people are wired that way. You know, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I meet, founders of companies. I mean, they've been wired to, more is better.
Yeah. There's a few things. It often starts with mindset because I
Hmm.
find most people are are keeping themselves in this way of working. And you hit on it earlier. The company will always take as many hours as you give it. Your business will always take as many hours as you give it. And you'll never feel like you're fully on top of it because there's always more to do. So if you're just operating under the feeling that I'm not getting enough done, I feel guilty about stopping, that won't go away. And so part of that is breaking free from that mindset that if you couldn't get it done today, it will be there tomorrow. If you don't get it done tomorrow, it probably wasn't that important to you. And that's something that I really truly believe. And if something gets knocked off my calendar 4 or 5 days in a row, I just delete it. Like I'm
Right.
not doing, it's not going to add the value. Um, Second is a lot of people think really intentionally about how they invest their money, but not how they invest their time.
Right.
And so I do a lot of exercises with my clients around looking at their calendar, looking at their zone of genius. What's the work that they're the best at and energized by? And then looking at ways that we can optimize the way they're investing their time. And I really teach this pattern of every single day looking at your calendar and saying, is this the right way to invest the 8 or 10 hours I'm going to do in my work today and in my life outside of that? Because I think a lot of people are getting lost in busy work and they get trapped feeling like they have to do it all when only a small percentage of the stuff they're doing is actually really moving things forwards.
Yeah, and I think your message is so important in so many ways because I have experiences working in big corporations, multinational global corporations or multinational global consulting. And that's not true for most people. Most people work in small businesses. They work with, 3 or 4 other colleagues. And there are a lot of choice points that you get to make when, you're not a appendage of working for the man. Uh, it's such an important message. So how do you begin to cultivate? I mean, how does somebody, find you, discover you, and connect with this important work that you're doing?
So most of my clients come through LinkedIn. I post content on there every day and I connect with people and offer support and share my experience. Um, for most people, when they come to me, it's because they're in a point of severe pain around how much
Uh-huh.
they're working. And they're not just like, oh, it would be nice to work less. They're at a point of, if I don't figure out how to work less, something bad's going to happen. Energet for me and my energy and my health, my relationships, or I'm not going to be able to continue to maintain the role I'm in or the business that I'm leading. And So there's a desperation around that. And it
Uh-huh.
comes from being in that place for too long with no end in sight. So the first thing I always try to do is help them get back 10, 20, 30 hours a week from their job or their business so that they can start to breathe, catch their energy again, enjoy their life more, and then refocus on what's the path to get the business or the job or the life that you want.
So is this a holistic approach? I mean, and I hate to use that word in so many ways, but if I come to you and I'm saying, I'm going to reclaim some of my life, my business is doing well, or I'm just so stressed by it, am I going to be learning about, what to eat, how to manage my diet, making sure I exercise, or, break it down a little bit for our audience, Jordy?
Sure. I don't step into lifestyle stuff like that, like health and wellness. I
Right.
focus more on time management, money management, and team management. So time, money, and team, those are the three things that I find when people are not managing them intentionally or effectively, their work consumes more hours than it needs to. And by looking at each of those, by creating their ideal work schedule, by investing their money in freedom and the lifestyle they want to live, and by working with a team to support them, they can get back to a reasonable workload and a sustainable way of growing moving forwards.
I think it's so important and it's critical. I'm just in the process of wrapping up participation in a group that was focused on health and fitness for a certain demographic. And part of what got in my way was, exchanging recipes. Here's more exercise that you can do. Was it didn't seem to, get at some of the core issue here about how do I manage my time. I mean, I've seen a million great recipes. I know about low carb, low fat, whatever, sort of approaches you want to take to eating. I know about the importance of exercise and being active. Um, and yet it didn't really grab me. Even though the founder of that company, he claims that I've been a mentor to him, and I never knew that. That was the good thing I got out of that. Um, but it really, it's so nice to hear you say that. And it's so refreshing that this isn't just a more of, well, you need to eat better or you need to be more active. It's a way of gaining insight into really what I always tell people who come to me for career coaching. I ask them, do you want to direct the significance of your life? Because that's what this is about directing the significance of your life. And career takes up so much of life that, you might want to give it 30 minutes worth of thought or, 90 minutes worth of thought every other week with me about how do you want to direct the significance of your life?
Yeah, well said. I like that framing. The way I think about it is a lot of us get lost outsourcing our happiness and the life we want to live until the future. And we say, I'm just going to grind today for a few more years until I get to this level, this role, this amount of money, whatever outcome we attach it to. And then that day comes and we've immediately identified a new level. And that's where people lose sight of living the life they want to live today because they're like, I can't enjoy my life today until I have this thing. And the only way to get that thing is to grind for it. That's the mentality that I think is really dangerous and toxic in the work culture today because life is actually really short. And if you're working 10, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, which is quite common in the people I talk to, I think you're giving up too much of the best days of your life for your work and your money.
That requires what I would think for many would be a transformational shift. That's not, just, okay, I'm going to turn my life over here to Jordy and he's going to help me think about how I organize it. I mean, that's quite a shift that someone has to be willing to take is this, to be on this journey of transformation. And the promise is that life is short. You're going to enjoy it more. I mean, Are there other like aspects that you can point to, or that maybe you've seen in client situations, or even experienced in your own life?
Definitely. Yeah, and I understand it's a big promise, but so I'll share an example from a recent client. And she was working nonstop all day, every single day, to grow two businesses, because she believed that by growing these two businesses, I'll eventually get to a place where I have the freedom to buy back my time and enjoy my life more, see my partner, and go on vacations. When I talked to her, she hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Her partner was like resenting her and telling her consistently, "You're not paying enough attention to me. You're not giving me the time that I need to have a good relationship." And so the transformation and the breakthrough for her was recognizing that the path she had chosen to get the thing she wanted was actually preventing her from having that thing she wanted today. So we made a couple changes in her business. We got her more support. We changed the way she chooses to invest her time. Now she works 40 hours a week. She took a 3-week vacation with her partner, and she realized the goal I think I can't have until years from now when I have enough money or a big enough business was actually available to me the whole time when I had my time back. And that's the biggest philosophy that I believe in, is that time freedom is the path that most people think about when they think about retirement, when they think about real success. It's, I'll have the time to spend more time at home with my family, take time off, go on vacations, all these things. But they attach time freedom to money, and to more money, and to more work. And I believe, because I'm living it and I'm helping other people live it, you can choose to have time freedom today. You can choose to work less hours today and have this space to enjoy your life. And it will mean way more to you than having a bigger bank account but no time.
Yeah, or do they even have to be mutually exclusive? I mean, if you're able to work smart, I mean, can't you reap the rewards, the financial rewards as well?
Yeah, and this is kind of the funny thing that happens with most of my clients is they stop grinding and trying to do it all themselves, and they start to slow down, get more clear, and enjoy the process more. And typically their business grows way faster. And I have many
Right.
examples of this where people have been stalled because when you're working that much, you're not doing your best work. You're not at your most productive, even if you think you are. You're just not. The research shows after 50 hours a week, productivity falls off a cliff. Your thinking and your decision making ability is way reduced. And so often when people actually start working less, they do work smarter, they make better decisions, and they have a clearer path to get to where they want to go. Their business doubles, their career gets easier. And so it's in that sense, it is holistic in that it impacts life on many levels, not just how much time you're working.
I mean, let's say someone in our audience today, and thanks for all the folks who are listening. Someone in our audience today wants to make a change, wants to make a positive change in gaining some more control in their lives, but they think, well, I can't, afford these services. I can't do this or that. If you had one or two suggestions about something that someone could almost immediately implement in their life that would, help people access this abundance mentality, what might those one or two pieces of advice be, Jordy?
Sure. So there's two things. And the first one would be write down a clear vision of what you want your life to look like 1 year from now. And you talk to almost any coach and they'll talk about vision, but truly, if you're going to break free of the patterns and where you find yourself stuck, you need to see where you're aiming. And so I would write down a clear vision of, it's a year from now and my life is much more amazing and a lot more of the stuff that I want is happening in my life. What is that? And write it out for yourself. And often when people do this, they discover that it's not all about money. It's not all about the outward success. They'll write down that I'm spending more time with my family. I'm enjoying my weekends more. I've picked up a hobby again. I'm I'm better at my exercise because I've actually got space to commit to it. And so that's one step, is be clear on where you're aiming, and that will help you make those changes. Number two is much more like straightforward, and it's about how to get your time back. And it's called a time audit. And this is a simple exercise, but really important if you want to work more efficiently and work fewer hours. You look at your calendar from either last week or from this week. And for each task that you have on your calendar, whether it's a meeting or a project or whatever you're doing, you write down, what's the value of this to the organization, to my business, to my goals? And is this an energizing or a draining task? And you look at your calendar from the perspective of what's adding the most value and what's giving me the most energy in my work. And what would happen if I could shift the low value, draining work towards the high value, high energy work? That shift makes your work more enjoyable, makes your results better, and frees you from the grind on the stuff that's not getting you where you want to go.
Yeah, what I'd have to say is, I mean, listening to you, and I hope for everyone among our listeners today, I mean, you also don't need to be at a breaking point in order to access this. I mean, you don't need to be, at the horrible point of burnout. I mean, in order to take advantage to access this richer, fuller life that you're describing. I imagine there often is some trigger, though, that causes someone to reach out to Jordan Tait at the website that we've provided and people can see in the show notes. But what are some of besides triggers? I mean, how does someone express this innate desire to, want to have it all? I mean, to have success in life, defined by good emotional health, financial health, physical well-being, intellectual health. I mean, how does someone begin to say, that's what I want to access? Does there need to be some critical event or?
No, I mean, a critical event usually forces the hand, but it also makes it harder to claw back from, because typically if you're in that place, there's some desperation. I call it survival mode. But I think it's a lot easier to change when you're not in survival mode, when you have more energy and clarity and ability to change your life. But the thing that I think keeps most people trapped is thinking that time is infinite and that there's always going to be more. And I have these goals and they're important to me, but I don't have time to focus on them today. I'll get to them someday in the future. And my life changed when I decided that if a goal was important to me or I wanted to make a change in my life, I was going to focus on it now and start making it happen sooner. And things start happening and you start to achieve those things, and then they open up the next level. But if you wait and you keep saying, yeah, I want to exercise, or yeah, I want to change the way I work, or yeah, I want to go on that holiday, but it's not the right time, you'll never just suddenly find yourself in the right time when all the stars have aligned. And that's the biggest shift I think people need to make, is realizing you can make those changes now if they're important enough to you.
I think it's so right. One of the certifications I hold is in something called the Immunity to Change by Bob Keegan and Lisa Leahy. And what Bob and Lisa both discovered in their research at Harvard was that, the barriers to most people changing, even in the face of death, like, oh, if you don't take this medicine every day, you're going to die. People don't do it because, this or that comes up. And it really, begins by identifying what you're worried about and having a goal around it, so that you don't have to wait for the catastrophe. You don't have to wait for the dire consequence. And it's so important, the work that you're doing and the work that you're offering. And I just want to clarify this for myself and for everyone in the listening audience. I don't have to be an entrepreneur to access this, right? I mean, I can't be one of these like folks in a corporation doing this. I mean, you could meet people at lots of different points for this.
Definitely. My primary target for clients is business owners, but
Yes.
I've been a management consultant for many years. I've been an operations manager. I've been in many organizations, so I know what that looks like. And I've coached hundreds of leaders in different businesses. So If you're out there and you're feeling that way, like your work is taking over more of your life than you want it to, you want to get back on a track, I'd love to speak to you and at least give you some steps you could take to get back more into balance.
That would be great. And it's such a wonderful name that you have for this website, the intentional business.ca. And it really is about intent and putting action to those intents as well. It's a wonderful way of rethinking work about, what some of the language that I always use is about bringing more of who you are to what you do. And what I've observed, having observed lots of people and lots of organizations and consulted with lots of teams and lots of people in the C suites, is that sometimes the more they show up at work, the worse things get. And I don't mean showing up intentionally. I mean just, you know, putting in drone like hours. I think more bad behaviors surface. You see less of people who, for who they are. Um, and you get grumpier and grouchier with it, as opposed to, taking a break, pulling your head off of your desk or off of the grindstone or the grist mill. And while we encourage that, I think for a lot of people, take a nap, do something, go take a walk. I think what you're offering is something more profound, more meaningful, and ultimately a richer experience about how to direct the significance of your life. And it's so great that you're able to leverage your experiences, Jordy, to benefit others and to help them realize, the rewards of a well-intended and well-meaning life. And that doesn't have to be exclusive of business.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Mike. It's really meaningful for me to help people enjoy their work and their life more. Because again, going back to my own experience, when I was deep in the grind and burning out, I wasn't showing up at my best at work and I wasn't showing up at my best in my life. And when I shifted and I started showing up at my best in both, my life took off like exponentially compared to the slog that I found myself in of I'm just trying to get through today and I can't even imagine how I'm going to get through tomorrow, but I'll show up again and do it. And that's a really hard way to live. And unfortunately, a lot of people stay stuck in that. And I, I think it's one of the things that a lot of humans, like it's a strength of us. We're resilient and we're determined and we push through. But if you're pushing through for too long, then something needs to change or you're always going to be stuck in that pattern.
Yeah. I always tell people that I've had really bad role models. Most of my mentors and teachers have worked until they've died. Um, so they're working into their 70s, into their 80s. And I think what you provide people is a way of thinking and organizing your life in such a way so that you're able to continue to, have not only a third act, but to have this fourth act for many people, but to do it in a way that's smart and to do it in a way that's fulfilling, not only for you personally. And I'm a big believer, please yourself first. And, that makes you better with others. But I think, what intrigues me about the work that you're doing is that it really will have a long-term benefit so that you can be more productive, more inspired, pursue meaning, and perhaps have greater insight throughout the decades with this approach that you're offering, Jordan Tait. So, Jordy, just I'm going to give you the last word here. If you were to again, ask people to come into your world to think about what it means to have more intention in work, in life, and to reap the rewards of success. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
I'd like to leave them with two questions. The first is, how much longer could I continue to work at the same pace that I'm working today? How many years could I keep this up before I hit a wall? And if it's not many years down the line, then your workload is unsustainable right now. And then the second would be, is the way I'm working today working to provide the lifestyle that I want? And when you check in on those two things, you'll have a pretty good sense of, am I managing my time and my energy well? And is my work or my business providing the life I want to live? Or is it actually too big of a trade-off?
Well, that's great. And it's been such a pleasure to have Jordan Tait in the studio today on the People Dividend. You can reach out to Jordan Tait, and I'll just, it'll be in the show notes, but everyone, and it's Tait, so there's no confusion on that. And you can find him at theintentionalbusiness.ca or on LinkedIn at Jordy Tait, Tait. Once again, Jordy, thank you so much for being on this episode of the People Dividend.
Thanks, Mike. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Until the next episode of the People Dividend, everyone, please stay well.